And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 773. Mixing things up. No Fab review this week as I was out of town and still kind of recovering because I'm old, and that's the way it works. So we are mixing it up with a friend of mine that I had the pleasure of meeting in person for the Barf draft at the Rec Room this year, which was great because we've kind of corresponded off and on the Twitter streets, and then we've kept in touch since then. He's been in he was the only non-live member, but that was fine because he's still teaching people how to play fantasy baseball in that league for the Bubba and the Blue Vegas draft. And many of you know him as Corked Wood on Twitter or at the Human Rain Delay. Mr. Brandon Waddell, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Bubba. Thanks for having me on. Long time listener to all your content, and happy to be jumping on and talking some NFBC OCs and baseball in general.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to this. We've been kind of trying to get this to go for a bit. My schedule's a mess, but it's clearing up now. So the second I looked at it, I'm like, I think I texted you Monday or something. I'm like, okay, we got a spot. Let's do this. And I'm glad we can make it work. And it kind of fits because where we're going to go tonight for the listeners is we're going to catch up on how Brandon's doing this season. But then we're also going to kind of give everybody an idea, like a successful player like him, how does he approach the second half of the season? Between fab, between ads, drops, all kinds of crazy stuff. So we'll get to all that in just a minute. But at first, Brandon, I want to start out is for those that for some reason might not know you. You were on a legendary podcast the other night called the Draft Champions Podcast. So they probably got to know you there, and you've been elsewhere as well. You've been doing this for a while, and you're very, very successful at it. So give just a brief recap to like new listeners potentially of how long you've been playing the NFBC and the titles you've brought home with you.
So NFPC, my first year was 2019, and kind of at the encouragement of some of my other friends who have been on the platform for a few years playing, a combination of OCs and main events, they thought I would just kind of have the analytical mind to jump in and have some success. I'd played on Yahoo, played on CBS, a little on ESPN growing up. I mean, for context, I'm 47. So, I've been doing fantasy sports for, close to 30 years since high school and college with buddies. But 2019 was my first year on the NFBC. I jumped straight into the OCs and did 2 leagues, ended up winning both and had a top 100 overall team. So,
first year,
immediately had success. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I was in for 700, out for 2,800. Fuck, this is great. I'm like, now I'm kind of got the bug. It's like, you enter your first poker tournament, you win it, and you're hooked for life. So, real similar kind of adrenaline rush at the end of the season, kind of seeing the money come in my account. 2020, I drafted a decent number of teams before they essentially canceled the season and started over with the sprint. And I didn't do anything. I thought I had a pretty good beat on what was going to happen and the guys I was on. And I followed along. And but I think I did maybe 1 or 2 $50 qualifiers. Following year, I did 6 OCs, and I think I did 6 $50 DCs. I quickly realized the DCs are not my thing. I'm much better at fabbing and grinding. But 1 2 of 6 the following year, another 6 OCs, 1 3, and then I ramped up my volume heavy in 2023 and played 13 OCs. Ended up winning 9 of them. I think I had 4 or 5 teams in the top 100 overall. Parlayed that into 14 more last year, ended up winning 4, had 1 team that went from first to third on the extra Monday of the season for the extra kick in the nuts.
Been there
and so that was especially painful, but no complaints. I had another profitable season. And then this year kind of diversified a little bit. I did 9 350 OCs, 2 750 OCs, strictly because of the upgraded payout to first and second, 4 250 standalone satellite 12-teamers, and then 2 gladiators just to kill some time before I actually wanted to spend the big money on my season-long teams that I could manage.
I love it. And see, this is why I love having a bunch of different voices on the show, because a lot of people go, okay, you need to do DCs or NFPC 50s to get ready for the regular season. No, not your bag. And I know other players that are starting to go that way as well. Like they're just kind of like, nope, not going to worry about it. I'm just a degenerate that has to be drafting. So in reality, I should just do $50 ones and just call it good. Kind of like how you did the gladiators as well. A couple things I want to ask you, because you pretty much, you're strictly 12s, and I respect it. Obviously, people listen to my show, they understand this. I'll play a few 15s like the listener leagues and stuff like that. But to me, and I like the OLAX. It's just fabbing's very tricky in there. It gets real. I like it. Kind of stops being fun for me after a while. If that makes any sense. What keeps you on 12s over 15s?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's we do it for fun. Obviously, I do it. I want to make money. And like I said, I've been profitable every season that I've played. But if you break it down to the cost per hour, I'm probably winning less than $1 an hour that I invest throughout the season. I mean, it's like every Sunday, it's 4 to 5 hours. I'm checking lineups. Monday, I got an alarm set. Monday for 3:05, Friday for 3:05. I'm checking news. I'm adjusting lineups. I'm doing preliminary sets after fab runs on Sunday night. So it's certainly not, a money-making machine, but it's nice to, win a couple $1,000 at the end of the year as opposed to lose. I'm certainly not going to complain about that. But I just have really enjoyed the process of 12-team OCs. I've done one or two 15-teamers, and I'm in 2 this year. I'm in the, the Bubba Bloom Auction Listener League, and then I'm in Barf with you, obviously. Yep. And my Barf team I think it's in 3rd. I've just been decimated by pitching injuries. I just lost Schwellenbach on top of losing Jared Jones and, 1 or 2 other starters before the season even started. Some throughout the Bubba Bloom, Listener League. I have Glasnow, Snell, and Hunter Green on my bench right now, and my team is still 8th overall in winning my league. So if I could get a couple of those guys back, I can make a push. I have a ton of hitting points, but I have about half as many pitching points. And I had Jazz out for a little bit too. He came back. He's helping me. So, my big buys were in that were Tatis, Jazz, Snell, and Glasnow. And I also got Yamamoto for a good price and Green for a good price. So Yamamoto's been kind of carrying me in the 15s, which is something I've noticed is a bit different than 12s. Is 1 or 2 really good pitchers can carry you in a 15, where it doesn't work in 12s. Like, you need consistency across the board. You need the depth. And, you just have to have guys who are giving you counting stats every night. You need the Ks, you need the wins, you need the ratios. Saves, you can either take it or leave it. That's a kind of a personal preference of how much you want to spend draft capital wise on those guys, or, fab dollars. But you just 1 through 23, you just need guys who produce in OCs. And that's kind of the big thing I've noticed playing a couple competitive 15s. Like, I consider both these leagues competitive. They're not main event competitive, but it's also, $50 as opposed to, $1,850. But you can survive. You can survive with a couple guys not being great in 15s. All your guys have to be good in 12s, especially if you're trying to compete for the overall. Like, you just have to have everybody dominating, and you have to be active. You have to keep making moves. You got to keep an eye on your lineup. You got to make sure you're getting maximizing at bats, maximizing innings pitched. You just have to be really on it. And if you're not, you're falling behind.
Yeah, and that's the thing with those 12s. Like, I notice as the season goes on, it's like, okay, you could be in it early if you kind of try to play the waiting game on certain situations. You could drop quickly, and then it's tough to get back, if that makes any sense out there. So in a 12, because like you said, you need that consistent production. If you're waiting for a guy to get it going, maybe he doesn't. That 3 to 4 week of waiting could be disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Brenton Doyle on a couple teams, right? And he's just kind of had a terrible season, honestly, right? He's, under 200, 5 homers, couple steals, just counting stats are terrible because the Rockies are terrible. And it's just like, okay, he's in my lineup. He's out of my lineup. He's back in for the home week, then he's back out. Like, what do you do with that guy? I took him in the 5th round. It's really hard to cut bait on a 5th rounder. And especially when he's shown the skills last year to put up a 20-30 season. But you have to make those decisions in 12s. And you, like you said, you sit there and wait and you waffle on it. And 3 weeks later, you've got a 2 for 45 going, and it just murders your batting average. It's just really bad. But again, you just stay vigilant, stay active. I really do think the OCs are just about grinding the fab and staying on top of it.
Yep, 100% with you on that. Be willing to add, drop certain players. We will get to a list later about that. I want to hit on the price points because I know when I was in Vegas, you were doing 750s online and having some fun there. You mentioned this is your first year getting into the 750s. And you said it's due to the payouts. That's strictly because of the payouts, or have you noticed anything different in the play? In theory, people say people pay more to get in it, so it's quote unquote more competitive. Grain of salt on that stuff. But what do you see a difference in the 750s versus the 350s potentially?
I didn't see a lot of difference in the draft. I actually really liked both of my teams coming out of the draft. I had the second pick in one of them and the first pick in one of them. So I ran hot with KDS, took Witt with one, took Ohtani with the other. The Ohtani team's good. The Witt team is bad. It just kind of, that team started Witt, Duran, Jazz, and I was so stoked. I was I got speed, power. I'm like, I got runs, I got RBIs, I got average. I'm like, man, this team is going to smoke. And then I followed it up with Adley and Sal Perez and like 5'6" or 6'7", got 2 dominant catchers. And it just hasn't fired, it just hasn't worked out. And so you just have teams like that. I mean, I have, 11, 12 teamers, in the OC landscape, and, 8 are cashing right now, 2 are close, and my 750 is not. It's just, I'm not going to give up on it, but it's just so far behind that I don't think it has a chance. It's got 60 points, 46 of those points are pitching. And I just don't have the hitting, and you just kind of know that, right? I mean, we're halfway through the season, we're over, 85 games or so. It's like, you just kind of know.
Yeah. Well, and then so now I'm going to jump around the outline to kind of pick up on that. So when your team is that bad in either pitching or hitting, and you have 3 months to go, so we're just a little over the halfway mark, how much more aggressive are you in fab for those? You're never ignoring the other half of it by any means, but how much more aggressive, say, in that league where you're really bad in hitting? Are you just going like, okay, these guys are getting dropped, we're going crazy each week in fab? Like, what's your process there?
Yeah, I mean, you can try. It's way easier to do with pitching, in my opinion, than it is with hitting. I just feel like there is more ability to stream pitchers than there is hitters. Like, I'm looking at this team right now, and it's just, it's like, I got Yandy Diaz, good price, but it's got Jung-Hoo Lee, it's got Otto Lopez, it's got Toglia, it's got Kwan, it's got Jaron Duran. Like, I have way too many guys that have less than 12 homers, halfway through the season, and some are single digits, and you need to average 24, 25 homers per spot in an OC for your offense through the entirety of the season to hit the 80 to 90th percentile outcomes that you need to not only win your league, but to try and be competitive in the overall. So I was just bad roster construction. Like, I track all my teams. I have an open spreadsheet while I'm drafting. I'm updating it every pick. If I'm at the turn, obviously it's every 2 picks, but I'm keeping a pretty diligent track of where I'm at, speed, power, pitching, Ks. And, like I said, sometimes you're just going to miss. I do a lot of teams. I mean, this year I had 9 350 OCs, 2 750s, like I said, 4 250 standalones. And, I feel like most of those are in the upper half of the league, but, finishing 6th or 7th doesn't really do much for you. And it's a long way to get to 1st or 2nd when you're down that far.
Yep, most definitely. You mentioned you're doing those 4 satellite leagues, and I started to kind of turn my brain into maybe doing some more of those as well for multiple reasons. Is you mentioned that 1st to 3rd drop, well, an OC only pays out twice, where a satellite pays out 3 times. There's less money going to the overall, obviously, because there is not an overall, so you get higher payouts in the satellites. But is there what was your philosophy or reasoning behind jumping in those 4 satellite leagues?
Yeah, it's basically ROI. Same thing with the 750, just to kind of circle back to that. So the 350 OC, right? If you win your league, you win 4x your money, right? 350 entry, 1,400 for win. You take 2nd, it's 2x your money, 700. For the 250 standalones, it's 1,600 for 1st,
yep.
Right? So it's over 6x your money. And then for 2nd, it's 600, which is, 2.5. And then it pays 3rd, 200. So you don't get full money back, but it's a nice rebate, right? Where you take 3rd in an OC, you just get 0.
Yep.
And the 750s is the same thing. So for essentially double the entry fee, we'll say slightly more, you think it would cross over evenly, where if you win a 750 OC, your 1st place would be 2,800 and 2nd place would be 14, but it's significantly higher. 1st place in the 750 OC is 4,300. And second place is 2,000. So again, you're like at that 6x number and that 2.5x number. So for me, it's kind of a math problem, right? Okay, where am I trying to maximize my ROI? Yes, you're getting a more competitive league in the 750, but I don't feel like the draft was more competitive, but the fab is definitely more competitive.
Okay.
There's significantly more moves being made in my 750s than most of my 350s. So that's where I've noticed it throughout the season. But the draft, I felt like I killed the draft in both. Super happy. The first one I did where I got Ohtani, I was at 90 points for quite a long time and just cannot buy a win from any of my pitchers. And so, I think I'm in like the, I don't know, mid to high 70s now. But that league is really flat. Whoever's winning that league is under 80 points right now. And it's kind of anybody's game in the top 4 or 5, kind of like the Vegas league was like a month ago.
Yeah, before Jason Wanick decided to show up and screw
Yeah,
up.
he went crazy, and now he's got a 20-point lead, and we're like, whoa, what happened?
But yeah, we're playing for second, Brandon. We're playing for second. So you mentioned 2 years ago you upped your volume, because you're more like, it seemed like roughly 6 a year. Then you took the jump to 13 and so on and so forth. Was it just because you built your bankroll, or is it a math problem for you that I'm going to go play more leagues? We can spread things out, diversify, and go a different route there.
Yeah, it wasn't a bankroll thing. I mean, I have every year, every year that I've won, I have withdrawn all my funds, used them for life expenses, and then spread it out throughout my entries. I buy 3-packs. I use the discount. I draft some teams, and I buy another 3-pack. I draft some teams. And so it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to draft, it's going to go essentially up by 3. So then I'm like, well, okay, I've had pretty good success. It's like I won close to 50% of my leagues of all my entries going into 2023. Let's up my volume and see what happens. It's like, I don't mind grinding. I love drafting. I mean, it's like the most fun thing ever. Right. And so kind of once you get going, and I know you can attest, it's hard to stop, and if you're a higher volume player, or they're hitting like some slow spots in their draft season, like they'll email you discounts and promos. They're like, hey, jump in. We're like, hey, we're doing like Sunday night, late night West Coast OC, $75 off. I'm like, how do I say no to that?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's going to save me, so my entry fee is $275 after the fees. Maybe it gets up to $290, but that's just helping your bottom line. It helps you make a few more bucks over the year. And so that's how I ended up with 13. I did the, 4 different 3-packs, and then they had just like a random one-off discount. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a sucker for saving money. Sign me up. Let's do it.
I'm with you there as well. We're going to start shifting this to second half here now, because I want to get into this. Since we're doing 12s, and you're talking about grind. So, and especially in the 750s, you mentioned Fab's crazy. I know in the Vegas league, there's tons of moves every week, but also there's tons of moves there. There's tons of moves in my 350 OCs, but there's a lot of empty bids, no backup bids. That's an OC thing. That's why I joke about it on my review show with Ben every week. It's like, yeah, it's for $1 or nothing, and we see where it goes from there. With the second half here now, with knowing a lot of guys check out. We're going to have a lot of lower bids. This is just the reality of the situation. How do you approach Fab? Does it change anything from you? How do you delegate your money? Because I guess first off, are you flush with Fab, or are you like most of the world that has spent a ton already?
Yeah, obviously I'm all over the place. So with having, and we'll just focus specifically on the OCs, not the standalones, because the standalones are a little different for sure. They have a different Fab vibe because there is no overall closers float around in the pool a little longer. Specs don't really get picked up. It's just kind of a different dynamic. But my 11 OCs, my money is all over the place. I have anywhere from 165 to 470. Okay. And in that league that I have 470, I spent 117 on Chase Burns. So I had almost $600 going into last Sunday.
Wow.
And it's not a team that's winning, but it's a team that's good and it's close. And not quite sure why I have so much money. Maybe I just haven't had injuries. I don't keep a super tight track on all my teams and who got hurt and, who got hurt preseason, who got hurt in season, what teams are healthiest. But it's all over the place for me. I don't have any hard and set fast rules about what I want going into the second half or what I want by the end of August. I just know for the last month of the season, I want 50 to 100, depending on league. And you can scale that down. As you mentioned, like you're already seeing some $0 backup bids. And I already know one of my leagues is, there's only like 5 or 6 guys making ads. And I've seen a lot of no backups. And there's maybe 10 total moves, the last couple of weeks. So I can scale down accordingly. I can be more aggressive on guys I think will really help me over the next month or two. And then I know I can just bid $2 or $3 and no one's even going to probably contest me on guys that I'm trying to stream to either make up Ks or wins or take advantage of a really good spot against terrible offenses that always emerge in the last month of the season. And you just, like I said, it's really is league dependent, but just pay attention, right? Just go through the last couple weeks of your fab before you do the fab for the current week, and you'll see which guys are competitive, check how much money they have left, and then bid accordingly, right? I mean, it takes a little bit of time to give yourself a small edge, and just you stack those small edges over the season. And I think that's what gets you up there. And like, these are all things I do, consciously. It's not a fluke that I'm just, talking about this. It's all stuff I do throughout the season.
No, and it makes a ton of sense. That's why I like doing the recap shows almost more for myself, to just kind of go through things and see where things are going, and laugh at some insane bids that went through because maybe people were asleep for 3 weeks and had a bunch of money to spend. Who knows? But there's always a few of those in your OCs. But yeah, to your point, is that's kind of where I'm sitting. Is I've always kind of been a more of a tepid bidder. I'm not a heavy high bidder person, but it's left me with anywhere from probably $200 to $400 in most leagues. So now I can be really aggressive on guys I need, and that's kind of I like having that situation potentially. At the same time, as if you do want to play the streaming game, if you finally say I'm pulling the pin on this guy and I'm just going to stream this position the rest of the season. In a 12, you could almost do that more often than not as the season goes along, especially with all these injuries. Not always, but you can try, and that gives you that ability. To your point, let's start with hitting on this side of the spectrum for now. Everyone talks about ratio stats are harder and harder to make up as the season goes on, and that's just a statistical formula. Makes sense, quantity and everything. But home runs, RBIs, runs, stolen bases. How do you approach as you're going down the stretch, knowing, hey, I can make up like 4 points in the next 2 months in this category if I gain X amount? How do you approach that? And I guess fab per se, if that makes sense.
Yeah, stolen bases, I think, is the only category you can really target, because there are some guys who will steal that don't give you a lot of other counting stats. And we'll use Chandler Simpson as the easy example, right? Everyone knows him. 20 stolen bases and 150 at bats or plate appearances, but no power. I don't even know if he had a 1% hard hit rate, but he's going to help you a ton in steals, but he's going to actively hurt you in homers, RBIs. He's going to help in runs. He's going to help in average, but if he's batting ninth, right, the runs is kind of mitigated. So it really does become team dependent. If you have a team that's 20, 25 homers ahead of the second place team, but you're in 10th or 11th in steals, and a guy like him makes a ton of sense. And I know he's not available, right? He's owned wildly, but I picked up Caballero in a team I was hurting for speed, have a 30 homer lead over the field, leading in RBIs, close in runs. And I'm just like, God, I know this guy's only going to play 4 days a week, but he could get me 3 to 4 steals every week, and that's going to vault me up the standings. And he's been helping, right? That team has mid 80s, and if I can get him on a hot week, or if Taylor Walls gets hurt and stops subbing in for him, then all of a sudden he's playing 6 days a week, and boom, I'm onto something. But I really think it's team dependent, league dependent, and just kind of where you are in the standings. But just be vigilant about it. Like, look at it. I always have my league standings page up when I'm doing fab every week. It's like, where can I gain, and who am I adding, and who am I replacing? So if I add this guy, is he going to play? Is he any different than the guy that I'm thinking about dropping or benching for him? And if the answer is no, then you just leave it alone, or you just add some bench depth if you lost a guy for the year. And, that's never a bad thing. But I know we're going to get to it later, kind of a list of hard drops. But you just got to look at, who you're dropping them for. Like, it makes sense. Like, hey, this guy's hurt. Maybe he won't play the rest of the season, but am I really picking up, name a random, kind of like 7th outfielder type guy, or, a bench MI or like a bench CI.
Luke Rayleigh or something. Is that really weird?
Yeah. Or, somebody on the Pirates, what is it? Nick Gonzalez and Spencer Horwitz, right? I mean, they're batting top 4 in the lineup, and, they're getting run, but it's Pittsburgh. Like, they don't score. It's a tough place to hit homers. It's, one of the worst park factors for everything. And I'm guessing half those guys are going to give up. I mean, O'Neal Cruz seems like he already gave up. So I have him on a couple teams. I wish he would try, but it's hard. I think the biggest thing you can do, like I said, is just be willing to make the tough drop and have no remorse about it. There are guys I drop every year. I dropped Taylor Ward early this year on a team I now really need homers. I could definitely use his 20 home runs. I dropped Seth Lugo last year off a team in the first month of the season. Yeah. I mean, that hurt repeatedly. That hurt till the very end of the season. I was like, yeah, I could use 16 wins. Like, of course, but I'm just like, God, he's not striking anybody out. I just looking at his underlying, his K- walk is not good. I'm just going to get rid of him and try to pick up somebody who gets more strikeouts. In his next game, he struck out 8, and then he was just off to the races. So, I mean, I'm certainly not infallible. I make a lot of mistakes. You just try to mitigate those and make up for them with volume. I do think the OC game is a volume game, way different than Maine's. Maine's, you have to be steadfast. You have to stash. You have to hope to hit on a prospect that you drafted and held for 3 months. I think that's how you win those leagues and win those overalls. OCs, just make moves, like be active and just maximize at bats, maximize innings, try to get good innings. Don't just throw Kokanowitz because he's got a 2-start, like he's terrible.
Yep.
Don't throw road Rocky pitchers. They win less on the road than they do at home. It's don't throw Pirates. I mean, Heaney had a good game and, obviously Skeens is Skeens, but it's like, there's not much else there,
No, I'm with you on so much of this. Like, the team dependency thing, that's something I've been saying forever. It's like, yeah, the Rabbit's fun, but what else is he going to do? Like, he's killing you elsewhere, so you better be good in other spots because, like, he's going to put you up in stolen bases, but now you're going to drop everywhere else on your team, so it's going to be like a negative effect to your pitching side of it. That's such a great point. And that's something I kind of started learning a couple years ago, is because it used to be like, oh, two steps, and now I'm like, it's got to be pretty dang good. Like, the matchup's got to be really, really good for me to get excited about this. Like, I need to know that strikeouts are going to be great, or this, that, or the other, to make it even a conversation at this point in time. Because I know people talk volume, but I feel like I'd rather have like that one really good start from a third starter on a lot of teams that instead of a 2-step from like a Heaney, to your point, or something like that. And it's kind of a patience thing, I guess.
Yeah, and I've kind of toned down my 2-step streaming this year. The last 2 years, I feel like I was just literally throwing every 2-stepper out there who was on the waiver wire, and I'm just like, screw it. Every projection system I look at is telling me to start a 2-step guy over a 1-step guy, who's my like SP 567. So I'm gonna listen to the Sims. Like, they're smarter than me. They're computers. I'm like making dumb conscious decisions. They don't have a consciousness. They're just going to spit out the numbers, and I should probably trust those. That has severely backfired numerous times this year with guys I have either added or tried to add or just, watch the 2-step. And I was like, oh gosh. I mean, I've had ratios just nuked this year by picking up, who's our boy? David Festa. Yeah. I mean, I've added and dropped David Festa like 3 or 4 times this year. Pick him up for a 2-step, gives up 12 hits, 8 earned, doesn't get the second leg of the 2-step, and just want to jump off a bridge, Insert the Guilds diving off the, the high dive gif, and, it's just like, oh boy, now how do I make that up now? It's like, God, that takes a lot of really good starts and a lot of really good innings to get back to the baseline before I threw him. So, it seems like it's working a lot less this year than it has in years past. So might need to reevaluate that one.
Yeah, that's kind of like even for streaming hitters, because I want to get your thoughts on this, because you're talking about you just want to accumulate, you want to keep streaming and plugging along. But with so many platoons, I guess is the way I look at it this year. If it's like 6-game week and I'm going to get 4 games out of the 6, is that the new okay compared to people used to always say, you need to get all of them? Or do you approach your fab in this sense? Do you go, okay, I'm going to use this bench player for the first half of the week, and I'm going to pick up this bench player for the second half of the week, and now that two roster spots, in theory, a 1 roster spot for the week. How do you approach kind of finagling that to maximize your roster down the stretch?
I do a little bit of both, for sure. Ideally, you want 14 guys who just play every day, right? That's the dream. You don't have to worry about platoons. You don't have to worry about whether they're facing 2 lefties and 1 righty as a left-handed hitter, and if they're going to play 3 games or only 1, or if they, end up batting in the bottom of the order against the lefty and, leading off for top 4 against the righty. But you can morph that, right? So an example on all my teams, I have Andrew Benintendi on 10 or 11 teams, right? And I I did a pod with Waxman on the Draft Champs, and I talked about this. It's like he's been hitting. He's been hitting homers. He's playing for a bad team, but he's batting top 4, every day that he plays for the White Sox. He's batting 3rd or 4th. Opportunity to drive in home runs. He changed his swing. He's pulling the ball a lot more. And he's got 3 starts in Colorado, Friday, Saturday, Sunday against 3 righties. It's an absolute no-brainer play. Yep. And he's somehow only 42% rostered in OCs this week. Yep. Like, he's going to be on every one of my lineups this weekend. And if he goes, 0 for 16, so be it, right? It doesn't matter. It's the right play. And the Sims are going to tell you he's a top 10 play for the weekend because the hitting environment is great. The pitching is terrible. If you go to your guys' pitching planner, the K-BB is going to be single digits, right, for the entire series. And you should just play guys against them. And, people are like, oh, well, I don't want to bench so-and-so. I don't want to bench Stowers for Benintendi. Stowers is hot. And maybe you're right. But, I mean, the environment, the matchups, does not get any better than that, right? We all love cores. We attack cores, right? And I don't think that should change, even with terrible teams and quote unquote bad players.
And in my theory, it's all like the Benintendi versus Stowers is a great comparison because there's a lot of those we have every week where, to your point, people will say, oh, Stowers is heating up, so on and so forth. I think what it comes down to, it's the other part I try to tell myself, which is, as you probably know, very difficult to do, is if you it's the old joke, if you trust the process and stick to it all season, in the end, you're going to turn out to be very, very successful in this. Like, yeah, maybe one weekend Stowers does crush it and there's just a bad situation. But if you were to take that Benintendi Coors situation and just keep streaming that situation every time, you're going to blow the Stowers thing out of the water in the end.
Yeah, 100%. Like if you run that situation 50 different times, like Benintendi's going to rise to the top, right? In a 3-game sample, it's so small, anything can happen. Like I said, he could flame out and, or he could get hurt. I have Trent Grisham on a bunch of teams and, I stream him against, right-handed pitchers when he's got them, first or second half of the week. And this was no exception. He had 4 games against 4 right-handed pitchers, tweaked a hamstring in the first game. I'm not getting any of those at-bats. And there's nothing you can do. I feel like it's a right process play. The result sucks. I'm not getting potential stats for 3.5 games. But I just think it's important to have those guys on your bench, and they're available. They're around. Like Grisham, Gavin Sheets, right?
Yep.
I won't call him the mascot, but he's kind of like the folk hero of the Bubba Bloom pod. And I've been in on the clean the sheets movement all season. I know I've tweeted at you a few times when he has a 2-dong game or he just drives in 5 and
glorious.
It's great. And it's just like, okay, yeah, he's a platoon guy. I'm just going to play him against righties. I'm like, I'm not taking him out of my lineup now. He's batting 5th or 6th against lefties. He's hitting, he's producing. And he's, he shouldn't be like, his history says he's not this guy, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I jerked some Profar on a bunch of teams last year for his trip to Coors, and he was readily available. I picked him up on 6 or 7 teams. He never left my lineup the rest of the season. It was like 3.5 months of Profar, just smashing. Some guys just do it, they just, everything works for them. They run the hot BABIP, the bloopers fall. Every time they come up, there's 2 guys on. Like, there's just stuff that's so fluky that you just ride the hot hand. I mean, if you've watched enough baseball, there's hot and cold streaks, right? And it's
big time.
It's
a
not,
game of streaks, man.
Yeah. And it's not something anyone can deny. It's just, I mean, as a fellow Giant fan, right? I was watching the game before we jumped on here, and Jung Hoo Lee hit like a bases clearing triple, and they're like, he's 4 for 50. What was it? I wrote it down. 4 for 53 his last 15 games, and it's just like, I have a couple Jung Hoo Lee shares. Like, I was thinking about dropping him, it's just like 6 homers, batting 250.
It's tough, man.
Well, yeah. What am I doing? But it's like, okay, but he was so hot to be in the season. He was just, and so you just got to kind of ride it out, and going back to Stowers, right? Lit the world on fire. Soderstrom too, right? Lit the world on fire. Young lefty, just smashing. Went through a huge lull, and Stowers is now coming back out of it, getting hot again. Soderstrom's really struggling. I know you guys talked about him on your Barrel Fallers show on Tuesday, but it's tough. That run environment's so good. Sacramento's such a good place to have home games, and their offense is struggling. Their pitching is terrible, and they're going to lose a lot of games, but. Yep. Don't roster their pitchers, roster their hitters.
You just bench him until he goes back home.
Right. And that's a thing. Like, don't forget, you got 7 bench spots. if a guy's struggling, you don't need to cut him. Just put him on the bench for a while, and
So
just
let me
maybe
let
he
me ask
figures
you
it
this.
out.
Let me ask you this then. So that's one of the things that Vlad talks about. Everybody talks about. Everyone has different philosophies on it, and that's what makes it interesting. You have the 7 bench spots. To your point, obviously you're gonna have pitchers on the bench. You're gonna have hitters on the bench. You talked about earlier. All right, maybe it was before the show. We were talking about the pitching situations, and you might need to add a couple more, at least 1 or 2 more pitchers because of all the injuries on your bench instead of streaming them. But your hitters, say you have 4 hitters out of your 7. How do you utilize those? And let's turn it to a second half question. How do you utilize those to maximize your team? Are you focusing on adding bench guys you can fluctuate throughout the week for specific stats? Is it more of a 5-category play? Is it a week-to-week thing? How do you do that? Because like we just said, okay, Soderstrom, we're going to sit and play just in Sacramento. So thus, you have to have another player for when he's not there, and so on and so forth. How do you go about that?
Yeah, I think it's a week-to-week thing. I mean, if you want, you could do it, you can split the month up into 2-week sections. But I really, again, if you're trying to maximize and dedicate the time to try and get the most out of your offense and the most out of your team, I really do think you approach it on a week-to-week basis. And you want to have obviously talented players on your bench. Like I have a bunch of Austin Hayes.
Love him. Always hurt. I love him.
Yeah, always hurt, right? And I'm like, God, I've been on the verge of dropping him numerous times, but I was like, man, when he plays, he's good. He's hitting 300, great ballpark. And I have him benched for the first half of the week because it was Crochet and then, I don't know, 2 other people in Boston.
It was Boston.
It was Boston. Right. But I'm like, okay, well, Crochet's good. I feel like he's going to shut him down. So maybe I get 2 games out of him. Well, he goes homer triple first game against Crochet. Now I'm just kicking myself, but he's a good player to have on my bench. Like I said, good average, good power, great ballpark, bats 4th. And like, you just kind of want to have those guys available, and you can definitely overthink it. I overthink it. I make wrong decisions all the time. I play guys that, have an offer, and then I, bench guys that have 2 homer weeks. Like it's inevitable, especially in 12s. In 15s, you just play your good players. Like you don't really have options in 15s. You just play the guys who are starting and hope they don't get hurt, but you have a lot more difficult decisions in 12s as to who you actually want to play.
It's so true.
And if you're putting in the time, then it should be a challenging decision and you should make some mistakes, and you just got to live with it.
And it goes to show how you drafted. You picked up good players in the fab, and now you have decisions to make. And sometimes you'll make the right, sometimes you won't, as you said. Like every night, I've said it on my shows, is after I put the laptop away, I go to bed, I put baseball on or something, and I look at my standings for the night. Just how my teams do. Do it every night. It's a ritual. Mm-hmm. And in a 12 especially, it never fails. At least a pitcher or a hitter on my bench had a huge night. Never fails.
Yeah.
Never fails. But that's the life of 12s, because and I'm not saying by any means I'm doing everything right, but if you're doing certain things right, you should have talent in these spots. That's the point of having these guys on your team. So, yes, to your point is you do the process, you do what you have to do, but you're not always going to knock it out of the park per se.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. And you have to have that talent on your bench for your team to be good. Because, I mean, we've seen it, every week, right? I mean, just dudes are getting hit, broken wrists. I mean, Jeremy Pena, broken ribs, like talk about fluky. Yeah, he was on a couple of my really good teams. And, now I didn't have any backup because I was like, okay, he's going to Coors. Imaging was negative. Hopefully he's just really sore and can swing a bat in a couple of days, and he'll be back maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, right? But now you just take zeros. I'm like, okay, worth a gamble, in my opinion. I tried. Didn't work. Let's see what's available on Sunday, because now I got to replace him. And now I have to make a hard drop. Do I drop Pena because he's out for 4 to 8 weeks, which, knowing the Astros, could be 4 to 16 weeks.
Could be 4 to 8 months.
Yeah, or you hold him and make another difficult drop because you're adding probably a suboptimal shortstop / MI. Like, there's not a lot of those guys who are giving you good production. It's like adding the third catcher. Like, what am I really doing here? Should I just take the zeros? And sometimes the answer is yes. Just take the zeros instead of adding Patrick Bailey or Joey Bart or some other just like complete awful, I'll say average killer who gives you nothing in the counting stats. And I've done that in past seasons. I was like, okay, Tyler Stevenson's out 2 weeks. I'm just going to take zeros. I don't want to drop anybody on my team.
I'm doing that with Herrera right now, because I looked at the options and I'm like, I don't need a guy that I'm praying hits 1 home run for his 210 average. Like,
And that 210 average hurts you because,
Yep.
I mean, I don't want to bag on Patrick Bailey. He's one of the best defensive catchers in the league for our favorite team, but that boy cannot hit at all. And it's like I took a bunch of him as my C2. I was like, he's going to get at bats. He's just going to luck into like 40 runs and RBIs. Nope. No, he's not. And it was just like, okay, well, he's a quick drop, and just played the C2 shuffle a little bit. Got a Gustin Ramirez in a couple spots, which obviously was a huge upgrade. But I also tried with Kyle Teal, and that's kind of been the same thing. Just slightly better average, but just nothing from the counting stats.
Let's flip the pitchers here for a minute. Again, I think it was before we were on the air. We're trying. Well, this was on the air. We're trying to avoid just throwing all the two steps. As the season goes on, with more pitchers injuries, all these guys are getting called up. Some of them are going to be called up because they just have to have an arm to throw. Doesn't mean we should be adding him. Is the point there? Because everyone gets excited when certain players are called up. Now, Miz, Burns, different category, but you know what I'm trying to say here with certain situations. Where do you stand on trying to improve pitching, I guess, is because with so much volatility, you're not getting aces off the wire. You're probably not even getting SP2s or 3s most of the time off the waiver wire. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, you're definitely not getting, even Miz and Burns, right? It's like, yeah, these guys are really good, but what's their innings limit?
Volatile.
Yeah, volatile. I mean, we saw Miz first 2 outings, like this guy looks like, Paul Skeens on steroids, throwing 102, guys spinning themselves into the dirt and just like sitting on the ground trying to figure out what just happened, because they had like a 92 mile an hour slider almost hit him after they swung at it, but then tonight he walks a couple guys, gives up some hard contact, gives up some homers, 5 earned, 5 hits, 3 walks. I don't know, 3 or 4 innings. Like it's volatile. And, the run environments are only getting higher. Pitchers are giving up more runs, more hits, more walks. It just happens every summer, right? It's like this shouldn't be a surprising thing. But you can look at schedules, right? And I'm going to plug the Patreon as much as I can. I'm a Patreon member. You guys do amazing work on the Patreon. I mean, I'm just going to be unabashedly plugging you while we're talking. So, if you guys listen to the Tuesday show of Bubba Bloom, like they went through essentially every tab and every sheet that they have on their Patreon page, and it updates daily. And it's everything from pitch mix change, K-BB improvers, K-BB fallers, the pitching planner, which shows their schedule. And I'm like, if you're not using that stuff, it's just foolish. I mean, Patreon's $7 a month for Bubba Bloom, and it gives you so much invaluable information. Join the Patreon, jump in the Discord, utilize the tools, and be a better player. Seriously, it's like, this is stuff I use. I'm not just, talking out of my ass. Like I joined the Patreon to play in the Bubba Bloom Listener League. It wasn't mandatory. I'm sure I could have, DM'd him and say, hey man, I want a free membership, or I'm going to sign up for the free tier and, give me a spot. But it's like, I listen to these guys. They've given me a ton of useful information over the years. And so I want to support them. And I'm using the tools and they're helpful. You look at, RotoWire does the same thing. Like their pitching planner is good too. It lays it out nicely. It's good to have a couple sources of information to make sure I'm on the same page. And I would say my least favorite source of pitching information is the NFBC set lineups page. Their schedule page is a mess. They'll have the same guy pitching back-to-back days. You're like, that's not possible. Zach Wheeler's not pitching Monday and Tuesday, right? That's what they had up earlier this week. So, go outside sources, use what's available for literally, a pint of beer at a bar. We were talking about this earlier. It's a large coffee at Starbucks and a pint of beer at a bar for a month of really useful info for 6 months, and just take advantage of the info that's out there and plan accordingly. Like I looked at adding Landon Roop. He was available in one of my leagues, like 95, 96% owned. I'm like, he shouldn't be there. Like I'll take him on my bench. His next 3 starts were horrendous. And I deleted him from my waterfall. I'm like, nope. It was like at Philly, Dodgers, and maybe Coors, something like that, right? I'm just like, wow, I'm never pitching him. So why would I take up a valuable bench spot with a guy I'm never going to pitch? So, look at who's out there, look at why you want to put them on your team, and then look at what their schedule is going to be and figure out if they're even going to start. Because if not, then it's a waste of money and a waste of a spot. And those 7 spots are super valuable, and your fab dollars are super valuable. Like if you run out or you get down to the point where you can't have that super impactful guy for $25 in the last month of the season, who could help you go from 4th to 2nd or 3rd to 1st. Like, man, that really impacts your ROA, your bottom line, your ability to kind of try to scale up the following season. If you're rolling funds, and just trying to keep everything on the NFPC site. Like I said, I didn't do that. I needed the money for life funds. Like I was playing because I needed the money. Right. And I was happy to have the success I had, but I'm in a better financial spot now where I can leave my winnings on the site. I paid taxes on my winnings every year because I took the money off, right? Like that's not the way to do it, but I needed the money, right? Yep. So like there's different circumstances and different ways you can do it. And now I have the ability to leave my winnings on there, buy all my packages before the end of the year, mitigate my tax exposure to nothing, right? And then just and play the same, volume that I play every year. I'm in 17 fab leagues this year.
Goodness gracious.
It's a little much. I'm not going to lie.
Oh yeah.
It's a little daunting, but I do it every Sunday and I don't miss a Sunday. I have a partner in one of my 750s. He's been a 15 team player for a long time. And, he and I were talking about it. I'm like, I think I might jump in a couple. The money's just too good. He's like, well, let me know. Maybe I'll partner with you and I'll just kind of let you do your thing as kind of the OC guru. And, he's like, Ben, maybe we can run into something. So I've had him cover for me one Sunday. I was in Vegas on a golf trip and I was like, you're it. I'm not doing this at the airport. You can attest to how terrible it is trying to do it at the airport. Right. So, So, but that's it. But every other Sunday, like I'm here, Father's Day, I'm doing it, I spend time with the family. I do my thing. I'm like, hey, I need a couple hours at the laptop,
Beautiful.
But I don't lock myself in a room. I'm sitting on a laptop at my dining room table. So, that's where I do my fab. I do my fab at the dining room table. I got my family around, if, my wife needs me to take a break and, go outside and hang out with her. Yeah, of course, just take 30 minutes and circle back. So
it's good. You got a program in place, which is good because it can overwhelm some others like you have a system in place, which is very nice to see. The last thing I'm going to ask you here, unless something else pops up before we talk players, you keep saying it, and I agree wholeheartedly. We've said it multiple times: is the 7 bench spots are so important, especially down the stretch. But and this will kind of almost lead into some of what we'll talk about here in a minute. Are you still stashing right now? Are you okay stashing right now, or maybe it's a team dependent thing, obviously, but there's players that we might be dropping pretty soon because we can't stash anymore, or you're having the Jeremy Pena dilemma, which you'll approach on Sunday, of course. You can't make that decision now. But are you stashing at this point in the season?
Yeah, I've never been a big stasher. I rarely ever stash coming out of the draft. I don't want to poke the bear too hard, but I was just completely out on Bubba Chandler this year. Yeah, I had no Bubba Chandler.
I don't anymore either.
Yeah, right. But he took up one of your valuable spots for 3.5 months. And Andrew Painter got drafted a bunch, right? And it's just like, okay, well, there was news out there before the season started that he wasn't coming until after the All-Star break, and he was probably pitching somewhere between 60 and 80 innings.
Out of the bullpen, probably.
Yeah, and like, is that starter bullpen or starter innings, bullpen innings? I don't know. But I knew I just didn't want to have that on my bench, taking up a valuable spot of a guy that's definitely going to start, going to, try and get me 5 to 6 innings every time he's out there, and really kind of handcuff my maneuverability. So I'm not a big stasher. I do have Noelvi Marte on 8 or 9 teams. He was one of the guys that I was trying to accumulate along with Parker Meadows when they were both close to coming back. I drafted Parker Meadows on a few teams. I drafted him a ton on Underdog. He was a guy I was really high on. Second half breakout, good team context, should have been batting first, but he struggled since he came back. I actually didn't get any of them. So I feel, I won't say lucky because he's playing. Marte's not even playing yet, but
true.
His timeline just kept getting pushed back. So it's like, oh, he'll be back in a week. Sweet. Okay. I'll hold on to him now. It's, 3 or 4 weeks later. and now it's maybe he's back before the All-Star break. But I'm in it this long now. I'm just going to hold it and, hope something comes out the other side because, Heimer Candelario got, DFA'd or AAA'd, and then, CES has been not so great. I think he homered tonight but he's been, hitting 180 or something terrible. And I think he's got a chance to hit top 5 in the lineup. Great ballpark. We all love Great American. Ball flies out of there all summer long. So maybe I run into it and maybe he helps me. And then if he doesn't, then I just drop him. And, you just move on. It's just ignore the sunk cost fallacy. Like you got the guy, you paid for him, you either play him or you don't, and you move on. Like, Caglione, I paid $250 for him in a couple spots, $230. He has been on my bench. I'm not dropping him yet, but he certainly isn't playing. And, he'll get dropped if he continues to have 2 hits a week. And, again, he's not striking out a ton. His BABIP is like 185, but he's hitting a lot of grounders, not hitting in the air a lot, even though he is hitting it hard. That doesn't do us a lot of good. Hard ground balls is not the jam in fantasy baseball. You want guys who elevate and pull and hit it hard. Look at Cal Raleigh, right? He's leading the entire universe in pulled hard fly balls. So, shocker, he's got 30-plus homers.
Yeah, we don't get credit for killed worms on the field from worm burners, so that does not work.
Yeah, you don't get a homer for hitting it 109 on the ground, right? You just don't. You got to get your launch angle up for it to count. And, he's just having some issues with that right now. I mean, the guy's an elite hitter. He'll figure it out. Kurt's kind of figured it out after he came back from injury. I don't know what sparks that. Royal Stadium is just brutal to hit in. It suppresses home runs to begin with, and now you got a guy struggling, probably pressing, but he's worth holding because you're not going to find another guy out there who can all of a sudden run into 20 homers in the last 3 months.
Agreed. All right, let's talk about some players that might be time to just pull the pin on. Sunk costs, all that fun stuff. Where does it go here? We'll start with one that, I'm not just trying to throw jabs out the gate, but we're going to start at the top here with Michael Harris II. And I went down the rostered list on the NFBC, so this wasn't just me picking a name. This was 100% rostered in all formats. Michael Harris II, even after tonight's game on Wednesday, hitting 217 with 6 home runs and 12 stolen bases, Brandon. Like, it's been dreadful, yet many are still playing him. Let's just put it this way. In OCs, Michael Harris he's down to 60% rostered, or started, I should say. Started, which is a plus. People are benching him these days with Michael Harris. But what would you do? I think it's like a real conversation. Like, we know the skills are there, but he is crushing you, and this could be, again, to the point, which will be echoed a lot on the rest of the show, a valuable roster spot.
Yeah, I think he was a drop a while ago, honestly. I don't have any of him. I didn't draft any of him. I fell into it late last year after I was off. I was like, okay, I'm off Harris. Just doesn't do enough. Just doesn't get the count on categories. Like, 65 homer or 65 runs, 65 RBIs to go with, whatever it was, 15 to 20 homers and steals. Like, I just don't think that's enough. And then, all my early drafts, I avoided him. And then, I was taking Elly De La Cruz in that spot. And then later in draft season, I was like, well, I don't know. He's getting talked up again. It's, second half surge. All right. I'm back in. And I took Harris over Elly in some spots. And we all know how that worked horribly, right? I mean, that's a huge draft fail, right? But you have those, 1v1s a lot of time throughout draft season, right? And you don't know how they're going to work out until the end. And you can kind of go look back at your draft and see where you had your shortcomings and see why your team didn't succeed. And most of the time it's pretty evident, right? You picked wrong in the draft. It happens with pitchers all the times and happens with hitters. But Harris he just does nothing. I mean, he's supposed to be a guy that you have on your team because of his 280 batting average. Yep. What's he batting? 225 maybe?
After tonight, 217. It's bad.
Yeah, okay, 217. Yeah, you said that. So it's just like, yeah, it's not good. 18 runs? Is that right? I mean, is that possible?
Yeah. It's insane. He's got 43 RBIs. It's brutal.
I mean, 18 runs is absurdly terrible. Like, that's really bad. I mean, you need to average 70 to 75 runs and RBIs per position to be in the 80th percentile. And if you have a guy giving you 18, that is on pace for 40, 80. He's barely helping you in RBIs, and he's killing you in runs.
Yep.
And he's not helping you in homers. You need 25. He's got 6. He's helping you in steals, and he's most definitely hurting you in average. So he's helping you in 2 categories. Kind of in one, definitely helping in steals, right? I think the average is like 14 that you need for steals. So he's already there. But yeah, I think he's a drop. He's batting 7th or 8th. And Profar just came back. Profar's batting ahead of him. So it's another spot. He's moving down. There's got to be better replacement value than that out there.
I'd rather play Andrew Benintendi, to your point earlier.
Yeah, I mean, Ramon Laureano, he's not great. Yeah. He's like 25% owned, but he's batting 4th every day for the O's that he plays. And he's not a world beater. He doesn't barrel the ball a ton, but I mean, better home ballpark, gets to play, the Yankees and the Red Sox more often than not, both really good ballparks to hit in. You just can't fall in love with the name value. Like if you strip away the name value, and they do this a lot, some, people on Twitter will post player A, player B, player C. Yep. Like who you got, and then they'll list the names, and you're just like, oh man, if I had read the names, of course I would have picked, Michael Harris. That's why he's 96% owned, because of the name value, and also he got drafted in the 3rd or 4th round, and people just can't bring themselves to drop a guy that they spent so much draft capital on. But he's killing you. I mean, 3.5 months of 18 RBIs is really bad, and 217 is really bad. It's not good. It's like Brenton Doyle. Like he's actively hurting me on the teams I have him, but I've been bouncing him in and out. So if you've been, getting lucky with Harris and playing him the right weeks, or at least benching him and see if he can move up or figure it out, then yeah, I don't know. I just don't think you're being honest with your team if you're not looking at dropping him, or at the minimum benching him.
Benching him for sure. Benching him, yeah. But I'm with you. I didn't draft him in the first place. Jeremy Pena, you kind of hinted at it earlier. We have to wait and see, and maybe it definitely depends on what else you have available in this situation. But you kind of hinted on that I think you're leaning towards holding, but is he a drop for you?
Right now, he's a hold. I mean, we're going complete opposite ends of the spectrum here. Like Jeremy Pena has been great, like extraordinarily great this year, far exceeding what you thought he was going to do, and absolutely blowing his draft capital out of the water. Right? I mean, batting over 300. I think he's got 12 homers, 15 RBIs, counting stats. Been leading off for the Astros for close to 2 months now. They moved Altuve down in the lineup, and so Pena just had that role on absolute lock, and I thought he was primed for a huge season. And it's brutal, just gets drilled in the ribs with a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, and ends up breaking ribs. And there's nothing you can do. And those things don't heal fast. They don't heal how you think, and he's got to be to the point where he's pain-free swinging. Well, baseball swing is a big twisting motion. And, that's just a lot of torque on your rib cage. And, it's like the oblique thing. Like you just don't know. I mean, I was shocked Jake Berger was back in the lineup today. I figured he was toast for like 2 months. But,
as a fellow big man, does he really have an oblique? That's the question I have for him. But
yeah, it's fair. He somehow keeps hurting it, though.
That's the weird part, yes.
So you just don't know. Like, for me, Jeremy Pena is definitely a hold right now. Like I said, new injury. You're just not going to find anything remotely close to that on the waiver wire. So it's worth the hold. If you got 5 or 6 guys on the IL, and they're closer to coming back than he is, then maybe you look at cutting him. If you got guys are coming back in 2 weeks and can be impactful and helpful, and you think he's, best case scenario 6, then you can look at dropping it, and you can always re-add him, right? I mean, you can try. Yep. It's just I think he's worth holding for another week. I'm definitely, as much as I can in my power, going to hold him through this Sunday, and hopefully next Sunday get a little more clarity. Maybe he starts, ramping up baseball activities, doing a little jogging, whatever it may be, dry swings, who knows, right? But all the buzzwords for guys that are coming off injuries, you're just looking for a glimmer of hope that he might actually play baseball again.
He's alive. Speaking of guys, if we don't know if he's alive or not, Yordan Alvarez was in Florida taking batting practice, gets shut down, going to go see a hand specialist now, which doesn't sound good at all. Obviously, well, we should have the information by Sunday. That makes us a lot easier. Let's say the results come back and it's, hey, it's just, you re-aggravated it. He's going to be shut down for like a week or two and then ramp up again. What are you doing with Yordan?
Yeah, luckily a decision I don't have to make. Again, Yordan was on my no draft list for a number of reasons. One is his health history. Two, in OCs, I think in the first couple rounds, you are really trying to take 5 category guys. And he's not, right? He doesn't run, fairly lengthy health history, knee issues. Obviously, he's got hand issues now. And even when he was playing, I never thought his counting stats were that good. 39 homers, but it was always sub 100 RBIs, sub 100 runs. Same with Bryce Harper. He and Bryce Harper are like the same for me this draft season. They're both guys I just wasn't taking. And you can kind of make the same argument for Soto. He's just such an elite hitter and, in such a good lineup that and it's the guys who take a lot of walks, right? If you're taking a lot of walks, it's hard to be generating those RBI opportunities because you're not swinging the bat. Right. And I thought Bryce Harper, you could see it in his statistics the last few years. He hadn't cracked 100 RBIs in like 5 or 6 years. It was all in the mid 80s, runs and RBIs. And, he and Yordan were going, early to mid second round. And I was like praying that they got taken before it got to me when I was in the early half of the draft. I'm like, I don't even want to be tempted because just the name value. Like, I'm not on these guys. I don't want to take them, but the name value tells me I should. ADP tells me I should.
Yep.
But when's the last time he played? 2 months?
Well, let's put it this way, Brandon. Today, Wednesday, they transferred him to the 60-day IL. He's eligible to return today if he wants to. So it's been
that's what I thought I read that. I'm like, okay, he's on the 60-day, but he can come back anytime. So
it's been at least 2 months already. Yeah.
And there's no sign of optimism. It's just like it hurt to swing a bat. And he's not trying to swing like 110. It's just trying to take BP swings. Like those are 50%, 70% output. He's just trying to make contact and see if his hand can go through the impact and the vibration of making contact with the ball. And the answer was no. Right. So, gosh, it's a brutal cut. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision, but if your team is 4th or 5th and you're falling behind in homers, runs, and RBIs, and you think Yordan's going to save you, I think you're wrong because he may not play the rest of the season. And again, if he comes back next week and, it ends up biting you in the butt and he goes crazy, I think that's like a 5 to 10% chance outcome. Like, I don't think it's the likely outcome. The likely outcome is he plays maybe 4 to 6 weeks worth of games sporadically. You never know. They're going to give him time off. He's already got an injury, lengthy injury history. Who's to say he doesn't get hurt again? Trying to favor the hand. I'd probably cut him. It's brutal, but I'd probably cut him. Yep. I just don't think you're going to get the at-bats that you need. And you can pick up a guy who's playing every day, 6 days a week. Ernie Clement, like, let's go back to this guy,
Preach.
He's not going to get you homers. He barrels the ball like 3.5%, but sitting 400 over the last month, gets at bats every day. The Blue Jays are scoring runs. Addison Barger. God, I'd rather have Addison Barger on my team right now. That guy does hit for power. He does a little bit of platooning, but when he plays, he smokes the ball. He's active on 1 or 2 of my teams for sure right now. Yep. There's guys out there, and again, if you're just sitting there waiting for Yordan the Savior to walk through the door to say to shoot your team up the standings, I think you're just kind of lying to yourself about what the reality of his injury is and what his outlook is for the next 3 months, especially with past injury history. Like I said. Maybe the hand's fine, and all of a sudden he's rounding second and blows a knee. he's going to miss time. He doesn't have any cartilage in his knees. Like, the dude is like the oldest 28-year-old on the planet. He's like the Greg Oden of baseball. He just can't do it.
Yep, I'm 100% with you on that one. It's very Greg Oden of baseball. It's so true. Let's go back to Atlanta. More bad players on this team. Ozzie Albies, after Wednesday night, he's hitting 227 on the year with 6 home runs and 7 stolen bases. Another just absolutely dreadful season. Doesn't seem like it's getting any better. He's hitting towards the bottom of the order with Michael Harris. They're kind of hanging out together down there. Where's Ozzie Albies sit on your ad drop list?
Yeah, he's a cut. I don't even think it's like a question. He's a cut. I mean, OPS I think is below 600. You're trying to get guys at least minimum 700 OPS in your lineups. Obviously, you want to be north of that, but he's been brutal. You just look at his Savant page; it's just blue. Like nothing's good. And you kind of saw a little bit of this last year. He started declining a little bit. And he slipped really far in drafts this year. I saw him
he did.
Some 7th, 8th, 9th round Ozzie Albies. And I was like, ooh, God, that's really tempting. This was a 2nd round player a couple of years ago,
At a position that wasn't the best either.
Yeah, he's like 20-30, 100, batting 280. Like, this guy's amazing. He's going to be a perennial top 3 round player. And he's just fallen off a cliff. And I don't think it's coming back. I mean, we have, close to a full year this first half and last year's second half where he's been really bad. And the Atlanta offense got it going a little bit tonight, and they've been sporadic, but they're not that great. You kind of assume they're going to be sellers with Sale going on the 60-day DL, Schwellenbach fracturing his elbow. They're left with just, Joe Schmo throwing innings for them. Bryce Elder shouldn't be in that rotation, and now he's going to be like their number 3.
He's locked in.
He's locked in. He's a BP pitcher. He's not good. So, yeah, I think he's a cut. I don't think it's close.
This one is closer. I could see arguments on both sides of the fence here. Paul Goldschmidt started out outstanding for the Yankees, hit the skids of late, and now playing time is also becoming kind of an issue with Stanton back in the DH role. So there's a lot of players moving around for the Yankees. After Wednesday night's game, Goldie is hitting 286 with 8 home runs, 5 steals. Has scored 50 runs, though, which is nice. Where do you sit on Goldschmidt? Because, like I said, the numbers aren't horrible, but it's been dwindling.
Yeah, that's a tougher one for me. I'm going to try to pull him up real quick because I know his playing time has been dwindling, and that is important in 12s, right? You need the at-bats, and if you are not getting the at-bats, then I think he's a cut. So I'm looking at his weekly at-bats. And it's been pretty consistent, right? He's been right around 20 plus, right? Looking at the last couple of weeks. But it's 1 for 19, 2 for 18, 6 for 20, 2 for 21, 5 for 22. So it's been okay. But, the last month, 3 RBIs, 12 runs is good, 1 homer. I don't think that's helping you. He again, you need 25 homers. He has 8. He's playing less now. Instead of getting, 26, 27 at-bats, he's getting 17 to 20 at-bats. He's definitely sitting 1, if not 2 games a week. And, Ben Rice is getting playing time. Ben Rice is good, right? And he's getting, limited playing time. Giancarlo Stanton, they're going to play him until he gets hurt again. And then maybe Goldschmidt, jumps back up to 6 games a week. But that's a tough one. I don't think he's helping you enough. The runs, like you said, the runs is nice. 50 runs is great. He has 12 runs over the last month. You're going to take that, You're going to take that every day. But he's not helping you in the other categories. And you can probably find – their offense is so good, but you can probably find it somewhere else. Like, J.P. Crawford's not good, but he leads off. Same. Spencer Horwitz, Nick Gonzalez. Like, I'm just kind of naming terrible middle infielders, not first basemen, but just guys who are kind of out there and can play. And there's a lot of multi-position eligible guys out there who have first base and outfield or, first and second. I think you can find it. Someone who can, and maybe it's just a guy when you see the right setup for him with the pitching staff, you play him the first half and then bench him for the second and have a fill in. You should always have on your bench, you should always have some semblance of a backup outfielder, an MI or CI. Yeah, that's opposite of who you have in that position in your starting lineup. So if you have, 2 first basemen, you should have a third baseman as your bench player. If you have 2 shortstops, you should have a second baseman as your bench player because you can just swap one out if it gets hurt. Didn't work for me. I had Pena and Bubba get hurt this week, so I was just screwed, period. But But I mean, that's how you should be trying to assemble your bench, ideally, right? It doesn't always work, and sometimes there's better outfielders. So I'll carry 2 outfielders on my bench sometimes and just play the matchups. And sometimes I won't have MI coverage. I always do try to have CI coverage just because they hit for more power, and they can sometimes slot in at utility if something happens.
Yep, for sure. You kind of hinted on this earlier after that big triple in the first, but Jung-Hoo Lee, who has been just dreadful, still hitting 244 in the year, but 6 homers, 6 steals, 46 runs scored. It's like you wanted the batting average. That's not there, and that kind of takes away everything that he has to offer. But, he's maybe got to get back to it. Where are you at on Jung-Hoo Lee?
So this is a guy I do have on a couple teams. I have been playing this exact scenario in my mind as, he's been struggling. So, 46 runs, 34 RBIs, 300 at-bats. So he's getting the at-bats, right? I want a guy who's going to play. I want a guy who's going to be on the field. He was batting third. I think he's down to 5th or 6th now. I think he's a keep. I definitely think you kind of have to roster construction around him because of the deficiency in the homers. But he can hit him. Like, he hits for power. Like, he can definitely, generate the bat speed and the exit velo. It's just that ballpark does not really set up well for him. He likes to go, to right center, triples alley, just play to the ballpark, play to his strengths as opposed to trying to rip it over the wall into the water. But I think he's a keep. Just really good contact skills, good pedigree. I just think you hold on to it and hope he can hit a hot BABIP streak, hit 350 for a month or two and get that up to like 275, 280. And then that's really helping you in the average category. And he's going to score runs. If he's on base, he's going to score. So
he's going to score a ton. So,
yeah.
And then with him, a hot streak could turn into a ton of runs, a great batting average, and maybe start stealing some bases. So, you might get
obviously if you're on base, 4 for 53, it's hard to steal a base when you're on 4 times in 2 weeks. It's like pretty impossible. And you're certainly not going to be scoring any runs or driving in anybody if you just can't make contact. But, his track record said he's an elite contact guy. And, obviously he went through an extremely cold streak. But I kind of hold the faith. I might, maybe I got my Giants glasses on a little bit and, I'm rooting for the guy because I'm rooting for my team. And he starts getting hot. They get hot, win a few more games and, try to compete with the rest of the superstars in the NL West. But I think he's a keep.
Yep. For now, I'm with you on that one. It's a tough one, but I'd hold a little bit longer to see if he can get hot and turn things around. We're going to skip Josh Young because the Rangers did the right thing for us and just send him to AAA.
Yeah.
So we had that decision real easy. Let's head to the mound.
He's going from a bench spot to a cut spot on one of my teams. He's just been on the bench for like months. I'm like, okay, thanks Rangers. Made it easy.
Time to go. And there's, again, we're just for the listeners, like there's a long list of players we could have gone with, but I'm just trying to keep it reasonable here. So we're going to head to the mound. And this goes back to kind of one of the injured questions we had earlier with your Penas, your Jordans. Chris Sale. We know Chris Sale is out with the fractured rib. It seems like it's worse than Pena's, though. They are saying he's on the 60-day. The earliest he can come back is like the last week in August right now. That's the earliest he can physically come back based on the IL stint. Early reports from Atlanta said they hope he pitches later this season.
Right.
Where are you at on Chris Sale?
Yeah, that's another brutal one. I think it's a drop.
I'm with you.
Atlanta's not really competing in their division. Again, they just lost Schwellenbach on top of Sale in a 2-week period. And I just don't think their offense is good enough to outscore everybody right now. Like, they've been struggling. Their division is, the Mets and the Phillies are really good, good pitching staffs, equally good offenses, good bullpens. And, the Atlanta bullpen is in shambles. Lee got lit up. Iglesias can't get anybody out. So Pierce Johnson went from an 8th, 9th inning role to 6th or 7th. So I just don't think they have the talent to compete. And, they're wanting Chris Sale to pitch for them next year. So exactly. I think if they're 10 to 15 games out, why? And if he does come back, it'll be 2-3 innings. Just get back on the mound, get some confidence. Okay, I can throw. I'm pain-free. But I just don't see it. So drop.
Yep, I am 100% with you on that one when it comes to Chris Sale, because the biggest point I have that I agree with is why are they going to risk him at that point of the season? What do they have to gain there? So let's go to Jack Flaherty, who started out the year pretty strong, but man, oh man, the last 3-4 starts or so have been a disaster. And it's kind of been a trend you could see a little bit before that as well, if you really dig in on Jack Flaherty. Where are you sitting here? Because the way he's pitching now is, well, he's not startable right now to begin with. But it feels like even if he gets going a little better, it's just a, at best, streamer. I could be totally wrong. Where are you at on Jack Flaherty?
Well, I'm going to argue with you that he is a starter because I started him in every league this week, but it certainly didn't work out very well. I mean, he still had 8 or 9 strikeouts tonight, but I mean, I think he threw 40 pitches in the first inning. I mean, like, good God, like 40? Really?
Today was one of his better starts of late. That is true.
It was. I mean, he's been bad, right? I'm definitely not trying to sugarcoat it, but I have been eating every single one of his starts in my active lineup. I definitely have a soft spot for Jack Flaherty. He was on a lot of my teams last year. Thank you, Ryan Bloomfield, for the late draft season nugget on his increased velo and command. But, you know, and he had a good draft day price this year. Like I thought, you know, going back to the Tigers, you know, big ballpark, good team. You know, definitely thought they were on the rise and thought it was a really good spot for him to go back to. Had the familiarity, comfortability with the team and management and stuff. But he's definitely in a funk and not doing it right now. And it might be one of those things where you just watch it from afar, put him on your bench, wait for him to have 1 or 2 good starts, keep an eye on the underlying, you know, keep an eye on his 30-day rolling averages and, you know, look at the K-minus BB, you know, and look at his expected stats, you know, like, hey, what's his expected ERA over his last, you know, X number of starts? Because maybe he's just running a high BABIP, you know, or maybe he's giving up hard contact, you know, it's just like kind of looking into it a little bit, but he's definitely a guy I'm holding. Like I said, I'm actively starting him. But I'm also starting because I need wins, right? I mean, you know, the Tigers are going to be favored in a lot of their games. I need wins in leagues, and he's a guy I'm going to throw out there. And just if he gives up 4, I hope they score 5, you know, and that's it. And I hope he can get through 5 innings, and I don't care if he gives up, you know, a 9 ERA, like get me that dub, and I'm going to move up in the standing. So it's a case-by-case basis. But like I said, I'm doing it because I need wins, and he has a great win potential every week that he's on the mound. So.
And the bright side with Flaherty compared to some other streaming options, I guess, is he has the win potential that some streamers might have, but he also has a ceiling that no other streamer is probably going to have at the same time. So
agreed.
Yeah. So I can see the reasoning behind that to your point, and that's why it's kind of, I guess, pick your battles for now if you want, or just ride or die, as it sounds like you are, and see where it goes. So like those 9 Ks is going to come in handy. 5 innings, 3 earned. For, you know, for those experts out there, it's almost a quality start. That 4 or 5 ERA, gotta love it. But but 9 Ks, you can't. I've been so pissed the last 2 times Grant Holmes has been pushed up to great starts, and he gets those strikeouts have been on my bench. It's been just so not fun.
Yeah, the 15K game against Colorado when they pushed Sale back, like Sale was supposed to get the 2 start. Instead, Grant Holmes did. I had him on my bench. I think I'm 5 spots. I had him on my bench in 3 spots. In one of my teams, I really need Ks and wins. He didn't get the win. I won't say thank God, but 15 Ks, like that is enormous at the end of the season. Like you can lose 3 spots with 15 Ks at the end of the season if you have a competitive league and you're rolling, you know, your normal 7-2 or 6-3 out there for most of the season. Like that, that would hurt a lot. And I was like scrambling. I just saw him pitching and I was like, whoa. Wait, when did Grant Holmes get a 2-step on the road Rockies? I'm like, wait a minute. I never would have benched this. What happened? And then I saw they pushed Sale back and he just moved up and absolutely dominated. Wow, it's like his best start of the season, right? It's crazy.
Let's talk Michael King, who's got the weirdest shoulder injury I've ever heard of, because I don't think we really know what it is. They haven't told us the truth. Let's put it that way. He slept wrong on it. Like I hope he's got better mattresses than I do. And like my shoulders, I'm just old. He's an athlete. There's a difference. He's starting to throw on flat ground, if that means anything to you. And that means he's still a ways away. So what are you doing with Michael King?
Yeah, this is another one. I have a couple shares I've been holding.
Me too.
You know, got the update, you know, the scratch update, and then got the slept on it wrong, you know, back up to the update. I'm like, okay, good. You know, I've heard about that in the past. You know, guys sleep on it wrong, just kind of wake up a little bit of a dead arm, no big deal. And then you get he's actually dealing with a thoracic nerve issue. Yeah. So anybody that's been playing baseball or fantasy baseball as soon as you hear thoracic outlet in a pitcher, it is infinitely terrible. It is bad. And I can speak from personal experience. My wife had thoracic outlet surgery for just clearly not a baseball player, not a softball player, but just a medical issue. And, she was supposed to be back, you'll be back to normal in, 4, 6, 8 weeks. Like it is brutal. Like it's a long recovery. It's just like you are not getting blood flow to your arm. Like that's what this issue is. He's not getting blood flow to his arm. So he's not getting the sensation. He's not getting the feel. And he's not able to throw a baseball. He's certainly not able to throw a baseball 96, 97 miles an hour like he was before. So if they can't figure out how to alleviate the nerve issue, it's either going to be surgery or he's just going to be shut down and hope the inflammation goes away. And then he has to slowly ramp up. So I'm holding, but I'm waiting for a little bit more definitive, actionable news. Like if he gets any sort of setback, he's an insta-cut. I almost cut him, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I was like, well, I'll hold one more week. I'm just nobody I want to add that I'm just going to throw on my bench instead. Like his going back to the Flaherty thing, the upside, is unmatched on the waiver wire. So let me give it a couple, week or two more and see if I get some more news. And again, if he has any kind of setback or if he gets, throwing program shut down, he's just an insta cut and move on.
I'm with you. Like I've been very close a few weeks and someone else gets hurt. I'm like, I could drop this guy instead for now. We're going to hold King a little bit longer and see where it goes. And in reality, like the Jordan thing, it's like, maybe I should have just moved on, but time will tell on that one. Let's head to Zach Gallen, who I have made my voice very loud on. I've dropped him multiple places. I have him 15 still just because of replacement options, but he goes out and shoves against the Giants. Of course, that's just a little payback to Bubba over here. Not to mention the Giants just can't hit right now to begin with. Should have known better. But overall, Gallen's been horrible, the last 2 months of the season. Are you still holding him in 12s just because similar to like Flaherty's been better than Gallen, but Gallen showed the ceiling on Tuesday that other guys aren't going to have. So are you holding a Zach Gallen?
No, I would have cut him a long time ago like you did. I mean, I think he has the worst ERA of any qualified starter. There's other pitchers who have worse ERAs, but he's like a top 3 or bottom 3, bottom 5 ERA of qualified starters, I think. Maybe it got a little better with the shutout against the Giants, or what was it, seven innings, 10 Ks.
Heading into Wednesday, he has the worst for qualified starters.
Yes. Yeah, that's what
even
I thought.
After the Giants start. Even after the Giants start is still the worst.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
And Brandon Waddell third on that team.
Yeah, I know Fott's been bad. I mean, Sandy has been really bad. Ober's been terrible. And he finally went on the IL. I mean, as another guy I wasn't drafting, but if you have him, you can most definitely drop him. He is throwing 90-mile-an-hour BP fastballs, and it's not allowing him to get any swing and miss on his secondaries because they can just sit on secondaries and then catch up to the fastball because it's 90 miles an hour. And they just he throws it top of the zone, middle, and the guys are just smoking it. I mean, he's giving up 3 or 4 homers a game. So I know he's not on this list, but yes, if you have Bailey over, please drop him. Do your ratios a favor and get rid of him. Gallen, I would have dropped him about the same time frame you did. Again, actively hurting you. I know he's a guy who wants the ball. He had, a couple really, really, really good seasons, especially when they went to the World Series. I think he threw 230 innings that year with playoffs combined, and then just wasn't the same guy last year, and he continues to struggle this year. I think he's just got too much wear and tear on the body. He had I think it was like a random 13K outing at Yankees earlier in the season, right? Where he was probably on everybody's bench because he'd been terrible before.
Sure.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll play him again. Joke's on you. Let me get up, a whole bunch of runs for my next 5 starts. So, yeah, I think you can cut him. I think there's other guys out there. Yeah, there's not guys who have 10K upside, but I just think you're going to get the rug pull. It's kind of like the Taj Bradley effect. 1 out of every 4 or 5 games, he gives you that glimmer of hope. He just 1 hit, 2 walks, 7, 8 Ks, 6 innings. You're like, oh, okay. There's the guy that I thought I was getting, and he's always got that K upside, but he just gives up way too much contact. And it's a mirage, right? It's just not going to help you.
I guess that leads into you would be dropping Taj Bradley as well.
Yeah, so that's my professional segue right there from Gallen to Bradley on the rundown sheet. But yeah, again a guy I was completely off of a draft season.
Me too.
No consistency. AAA stadium. I think I had Drew Rasmussen once or twice. Other than that, I was off of Rays pitchers and on Rays hitters. Same thing with the A's. Drafted a few Luis Severino shares, dropped him pretty quickly after just seeing what Oakland was going to play like, and tried to pick up more hitters.
There you go. Bubba Chandler, you're with me. That should have been a drop. You mentioned that earlier. So I guess
we touched on that. I think it's just a no-brainer drop now.
Yeah,
I think he got hurt in AAA anyways.
He's been actually struggling the last month. I almost maybe like he's pissed like O'Neal Cruz. It feels like he's just like, what am I doing here?
Maybe. I mean, their pitching staff isn't good. He should be up throwing for them, but they got their reasons, and it's all money. So all you can do is just deal with the information you have, right? And you can kind of see the writing on the wall that the Pirates are in no hurry to get him up and to get him major league innings. They don't want to start his arb years. They're cheap, and it's terrible for him. And it's terrible for us. The guy's crazy talented. We should be seeing him in the majors, but again, if he's not going to pitch, then don't roster him. Don't keep him on your bench. It's an important spot. You need the flexibility.
Agreed. Dustin May of that team in LA that we don't like, Brandon, he started out the year pretty darn good. It's been really bad of late. So much so that the walks are outgoing the strikeouts of late, not to mention the bad the ERAs and whatnot. He's on a drop list for me this weekend. Where would you be on Dustin May? I only have him like in one league just because I didn't want many shares to begin with.
Yeah, I already dropped him probably like a month ago. Even when he was pitching okay, I had him and Gonsolin, even when they were pitching okay, and kind of going back in my own memory banks of looking at some of their starts and just remembering kind of what they were last year, right? Because I mean, pitchers don't really change their stripes unless they go through like a really dramatic, pitch mix change or go to a new organization who overhauls their arsenal. But it's like I was playing Gonsolin and I added him in a couple spots. I'm like, what am I doing? He's not good. He's a 4.5 ERA pitcher. He's on the Dodgers. They're going to throw, 9 different starters, every other week or so. And I think it's the same thing with May. Like we all are enamored with his stuff. I mean, he throws 99, 100, like, the movement is crazy. Doesn't miss bats. It just doesn't strike guys out. And he's not good. I don't know why he's not good, but he's not. Like you watch him pitch and you're like, dude, how is this guy even hittable? And, he should be Logan Webb with the type of movement that he gets on his pitches. And he should have, a Logan Webb strikeout rate, but he doesn't. And his K-minus BB is like 8. It's not 18, it's not 28, it's single digits. Like it's not good. And like you don't want that guy on your team. Period.
100% agree on that one. It's he's great for pitching ninja, not for most other things.
Right. Yeah. If pitching ninja gifts was a category, he's definitely, at top 5, but it doesn't matter when he can't get anybody out. So
all right, last one I got for you here. Aaron Nola kind of goes in the Michael King bucket. It's been out since May 14th. It was a rib injury or side injury is the latest deal with him. It started with an ankle. He's throwing from 120 feet, but nothing too crazy yet. Still no real timetable for Mr. Nola. Wasn't that great before that. Where are you at if you are still holding on to Aaron Nola?
Yeah, I would have dropped, I don't know, two months ago. Again, he was a guy on my no draft list. Just felt like he got kind of lucky last year to have a 3.5 ERA with close to a 1.3 whip, I think. And, I just think he kind of ran into some BABIP luck. And he just hasn't been good for a couple of years. Like, I just don't think he has. Like, he piles up the Ks, right? He volumes his way to 200 strikeouts every year. But that comes at a price. And, last year it was whip. This year it was everything. I don't know what his ratios were because I don't have him anywhere, and was just like completely off of him, trying to talk everybody I could out of him. Same with Ober. I'm like, just don't do it. I just think it's a really bad idea. So I don't know why you would be holding him. I don't know what you're hoping for. I mean, you saw the product on the field was terrible before he got hurt. So I don't understand why you would be hoping for, even a 50% improvement is still going to be kind of bad. They're going to win games, but and they have a rotation spot for him, right? I don't think Mick Abel's going to stay up very much longer. That guy gives up way too much hard contact. And he'll figure it out. Obviously, great prospect pedigree, but I mean, they're trying to win, and they're trying to win now. And if Nola isn't going to give them production when he's on the mound, they're not going to pitch him. They're not going to keep running him out there to give up, 4 to 6 earned runs every start. Like, they want to win a World Series, and this is their window. So again, should have been months ago.
Yep, that's a great call there. Fully endorse that sentiment. That's our list of players. I wanted to shout out Adam Brunchen in the chat here. He said earlier he's competing in 2 OCs out of his 3-pack. The other one is darn near the worst in the overall. I dropped guys like Gallen and Ober, and I'm streaming any available pitcher versus the White Sox, Rockies, Pittsburgh as an experiment. He says, for fun, I've held Bregman and Jordan. Not that I have delusions of competing, but don't want to be that guy who tilts a league with that level of drop. Well, Bregman's back soon. Jordan's a little different.
Yeah, but you're not even tilting your league. Like, one of my leagues, somebody, I think I don't know if I tweeted this directly at you, but I definitely tweeted it out. Someone dropped Bregman. Like,
you did tweet me. I remember that now.
The week he got hurt, and I was like, man, I got a lot of fab in this league. I'm in second. The guy winning the league is like top 10, top 20 overall. So I thought he was going to go after him. And I was like, all right, I got the money. I bid 167, and there was no backup. And my drop was Devin Williams the Sunday Luke Weaver tweaked his hamstring.
Yeah, I remember
so,
that.
I mean, whatever. It ended up being terrible. But don't be shy to drop a guy. Don't worry about everyone else in your league. They're not going to cry foul. They're not going to cry collusion. I mean, there's 2,800 teams in the OC. Whatever that is divided by 12, there's that many leagues, 250, 280 leagues. There's a ton of leagues out there. You're not under the microscope if you drop Jordan or if you drop, Bregman. There's guys who get dropped all the time that are quote unquote 100% owned. They're owned in every league except 1 or 2. And those happen throughout the season. There's plenty of guys that are 90+% owned on the waiver wire in, a number of my leagues. It's not every one of them. Some, guys are, more active and more diligent about, putting quote unquote good players on their bench just in case, just to have coverage. But yeah, don't be shy. Like, if you don't think Jordan's going to help you and you're just trying to maximize your points, drop him and pick up somebody who can help you.
I agree. Just for the levity's sake here, I have one of my OCs up right now that I was using for roster rates. I just went to the free agents part of it. A 97% rostered Ben Rice is available in this league. So it just goes to show you that you never know. You never know.
Yeah, and I added Ben Rice in one of my leagues like long after he
just got catcher eligibility today, so there's a chance I might be added him too.
And I've been holding him for that reason. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of playing him at CI, a little bit at utility if I need it, but I'm really hoping he gets that 10th game at catcher.
A part-time Ben Rice at catcher works for me all day long.
I mean, he's going to outproduce Keibert Ruiz in 2 weeks.
Yes,
it's there's plenty of bad catchers, C2s out there. Like, Ben Rice is a huge upgrade. Even with 4 games a week, he's a huge upgrade because that's all catcher 2s usually play, and they bat 9th and they can't hit. Ben Rice bats first. He can hit, like legit hit.
Yep, I'm 100% with you. All right, my friend, we're going to wrap it up there. That was an absolute joy to run through the gauntlet of OCs and some second half and some list of players, and we could have probably gone over a whole lot more things, and maybe we'll have to do that pretty soon, my friend. But appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. It's been a long time coming, and I don't know if you remember this, just a little anecdote to end the show. It was maybe 15 months ago. I was probably a few too many Modelo's deep in my kitchen watching the end of a Giants game, and I'd been listening to some of your stuff, and I just randomly DM'd you. And I was like, hey, man, I know you don't know me. I'm a total nobody, but love your stuff. Love your content. Fellow Giants fan. I've had some success in 12s. If you're ever looking for, a guest spot or somebody bails on you last minute, I'm on the West Coast. Hit me up. I'm in. Yep. And he's just like, yeah, who is this crazy guy? Like, DMing me out of nowhere. Like, I'm not going to give some stranger a spot on my show. But, it's just kind of how I broached the conversation, and I wasn't aggressive. I was just like, man, I love your stuff.
I remember
love
that,
talking baseball. And, just like, hey, appreciate the compliments about the show. I'll keep that in mind, and, 15 months later, we're here. And, in between that, it's like, hey, I support the Patreon. I support the show. I listen to all the episodes. I got to meet him in person. You just build those relationships, It's just like, I don't think what I do in the OCs is anything special. I know I've had a lot of success, and I know I've won my fair share of leagues, probably more than my fair share, but I don't think I'm doing stuff that, the next guy can't do. You just got to want it, and you just got to want to put in the time, and you just got to want to grind, because OCs are definitely a grind. But yeah, man, it's been really fun to be on your show. It's something I've looked forward to. Love the intro. I'm a lifelong Metallica fan. So, love the intro music ever since I started, listening. Gosh, I don't even know how many years ago now, but as long as I've been playing on the NFPC, I've been enjoying your content and benefiting from it and profiting from it. So thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. And thanks for the kind words. And it was a pleasure meeting you in San Francisco. Hopefully we can do that one again. Maybe we'll get you to Vegas this year. I know plans changed last minute for you.
Yeah, I was trying.
I know.
I was trying last year, trying again this year. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'll get there, because you can come to brunch with Booms and company. That was a blast. And yeah, it's a heck of a weekend, and we need to hang out some more and definitely have you on the show again. We'll have to chat it up and do some more fun stuff down the road. So appreciate you joining me, man.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Sounds good. Thanks, Bubba.
All right. No problem, everybody. This was Bench with Bubba, episode 773 with Corked Wood himself, Mr. Brandon Waddell. Catch y'all next time.